Hey guys, it's Cyrus of Chaos. Today I'm here with Ralf Bissdorf, and a few weeks ago I did a Q&A session with him and two other coaches, and one of the things that Ralf mentioned was during his time as the national coach of Singapore, he developed this drill to increase foot speed among his fencers. And when I was looking at the comments for this video, I got a lot of questions about that drill, what it was, and how you do it. And since this is a good time during the quarantine to practice footwork by yourself, I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk to Ralf and have him explain what that drill was and how you can do it at home to get the most out of this quarantine time. So, Ralf, do you want to introduce the drill and talk a little bit about how people can do it at their own home? So, go ahead.
Okay, no problem. My pleasure. But I have to correct you. I was not national coach in Singapore. I was head coach in a government sports school. So they have a Singapore sports school where there were 11 academies, one of them being fencing. And I was the first head coach there. So I had to develop the academy from scratch at that time.
Okay.
So when we started in Singapore sports school, and we went beyond Southeast Asia, so that means Hong Kong, China, Korea, Japan, we realized pretty early that they were way faster on the legs than we were. So we got constantly out-fenced, out-moved on the legs.
Yeah.
And went back and said, so what are we going to do about it? So what we did about it, we took a look at top-level fencers and how many leg movements are they doing per time unit. Mm-hmm. So I've shown you before a video where there's an action of a Korean fencer against Garotso. I timed it, and I don't have the tools to actually count it. But in Singapore we had sports analysts which would take a look at that. I counted about 10 leg movements in 1.4 seconds, and he actually started slower. So when we looked at those videos, we got to about 7 to 8 leg movements per second for top level, top speed in Asia. And I think the Asian fencers, speed-wise, are probably among the fastest in the world in probably any weapon, whether that's Korean men's saber or whether that's Korean men's foil or Hong Kong men's foil. I think no difference. So the first part was the analysis, what's the top level? And then we took a look at our top level. So our kids in school were obviously younger. And beginning when we started, our top people could perform about 250, maybe 280 leg movements per minute. So we did it per minute because that was easier to track. So step number 1, what's the top level? Number 2, create a time unit that we like, which was per minute, figure out where we were, and then figure out how are we going to raise the level. So we had 3 different time drills. So there would be either a 20-second sequence, a half a minute sequence, or a full minute sequence. So easy to multiply by 3, multiplied by 2, and the other one you don't need to multiply. 10 seconds seemed too slow for us, or too little for us, and that's how we started. And then in the beginning it was just simple, like 1 minute, try to increase by 10%, keep that, try to increase by another 5%, keep that, try to increase by another 5%. And in the beginning that got us quite a bit forward. Mm-hmm. Then later we reduced the time unit to half a minute or 20 seconds. And we realized the kids can go faster, obviously, because they don't need to perform it for a full minute.
Yeah.
So the next stage we reduced to half a minute, 20 seconds, increased the number of repetitions, but the kids got faster. And then we went back to being able to do that over 1 minute. And then for a drill, it would look, there are different ways of doing that, and it depends what setting you have. So we would do group drills where everybody had to do a certain number. And the numbers were sometimes individual because we had younger fencers, we had male and female, We had foil, épée, and saber there. So everybody had an individual number, and the whole group, and at the maximum capacity in Singapore Sports School, we had about 36 students. So of the whole group, only 10% were allowed to not achieve their number, which is 3 or 4 people. And then we would do drills like, we do this 9 times, we do this 12 times. So 12 times 1 minute with, let's say, 15 seconds break. We would do 20 seconds drill with shorter breaks. Our regular break there would be 5 to 8 seconds, because that's the time, how much time a referee takes to explain the action and on-guard ready fence. So we would include that into the drill. And then with the group setting, it was quite interesting because you have the whole group working hard. Everybody still works individual. And they work for a common goal. Not more than 4 people can fail.
Right.
The maximum that we did, if I remember correctly, was 27 minutes. So that means we did 9 times 1 minute, a normal break. We would assume that's 1 match. 5-minute breaks, another 9 times 1 minute, and then another time. But it's really extreme.
Yeah, that sounds hard.
Yes, when we arrived in Singapore, the best result in a world championship was 58th. When I left, Singapore had won 3 medals in world championships in cadet and junior level. So we needed to get better.
Yeah.
And there was no running away from, the guys are just faster.
Right.
And in the beginning, when we were at Asian championships, people liked to fence us. 5 years later, they didn't. Everybody hated to fence us. And
it's a great compliment.
Yeah, that was cool. There were certain rules to the footwork, because the kids are quite smart. So in the beginning, they were like just horsing around. Okay, 10 steps forward, 10 steps back, 10 steps forward, 10 steps back, because we get the maximum number in.
Right.
So we added some rules. So you couldn't do more than 3 steps in one direction. You had to have a certain number of lunges in whatever time we would do. And it had to actually look like footwork. So if I would supervise and call somebody's name, that would mean this doesn't look like fencing anymore. And then they had to do something about it. If not, they would consider having failed this one sequence.
Right.
And kids loved and hated it. They actually understood the necessity of it. And we, as I said, we got from mid 200s or high 200s into the mid 400s within a pretty short amount of time, and could do, we had one guy who could consistently do over 400 for a very, very long time. So he would be able to do like 27 times over 400, which is pretty unbelievable. And if you see that in reality, it's pretty amazing. And I have to give the kids a lot of credit for doing that.
Yeah.
And now in the club, we are still doing these drills occasionally. In the US, there is more rhythm in fencing, and it's not necessarily as not as fast, but not always as fast as it is in, let's say, Korea and China and Japan. So here, there are more necessities, so you have to do a little bit more rhythm. In Asia, in the beginning, it was primarily speed.
Right. So how much space would someone need to do this drill and do it optimally?
Well, if you stick to the rules that you can't do more than 3 steps in the same directions, and then if you are quite aware, if you, let's say, do an advanced lunge or something, you can probably do that within 15 feet or even less. I mean, just do the steps a little bit smaller. You can probably do that less. In the beginning, it will be very difficult to count because you're moving at potentially 6-7 leg movements per second. So in the beginning, generally it's advisable to count steps, then multiply that by 2.
Right.
Or lunge and recover is 2. And after a while, you're going to get the hang of it, how to count. But in the beginning, if I ask fencers, so what's your number? very often you have like, I don't have a number.
Yeah.
So don't get frustrated in the beginning if you don't have a number. Worst case, you can videotape it.
And count later.
Count later. Or even if the number is off by 10, it doesn't really matter. You get an idea whether you ride in the 200s or in the 300s or in the 400s.
Yeah. And another way that might work that I just thought of is if you have a Fitbit, I mean, that wouldn't be an exact perfect number, but that could at least start to keep track. So you'd know that you're like in the right ballpark.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't record it and have somebody looking at it later and really counting in slow motion, you're not sure whether the number is correct.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, and if you as a coach look at it for a while, you can safely say this one is a 400, this one is a 350, this one is a 280, and you get a ballpark. And the exact number, I think, is in the end irrelevant. I mean, if you want to do a personal best or something, record it and count it later. But generally, I think it is irrelevant.
Right, as long as there's progress being made, it's not the exact number is not super important.
Yeah, and you will feel the progress, and you will obviously feel I'm moving faster. I get more leg movements in. It's something that is really obvious that you're gonna do 10% more, 20% more. That you're gonna push your comfort speed or even your maximum speed, and leave that comfort zone and potentially get comfortable at a higher speed level.
Awesome. Okay, so just to recap the rules quickly. No more than 3 steps in any one direction at a time. How often did you say that you had to lunge?
Well, we would say that when you 1 in 10 leg movements should be a lunge. Whether it's 1 in 12, it doesn't matter. But
set a number.
Do 4 or 5 steps, then do a lunge. In the beginning, maybe less lunges because lunge will take more time to recover. Generally, steps are a tiny little bit faster. And then in the beginning, be a bit careful with lunges because if you do, let's say, 9 minutes, and then in the 9th minute you lunge, your injury risk goes pretty high.
Yeah.
So start a little bit conservative. We would say in a minute we want to have 10 lunges, maybe 15 lunges. That seems reasonable. If it's shorter, then maybe every 10, 12 leg movements, if it's 20 seconds. So whatever makes sense. So if you feel like you're just running around and for no purpose,
add some lunges.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And if you use a little bit of visualization and say, hey, look, I'm going forward, I do an attack or I do a takeover from backwards to forward so that the lunge actually makes sense, then it's even better.
Right, okay. So no more than 3 steps in any one direction at a time. Add lunges at some specified interval just to make sure that those are included in your footwork. And either record or try to have some number in your head when you're doing it. But again, like that's less important as long as you feel the progress is happening.
Yeah, and if you're 10 off in the count, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
You will see if you start at, let's say, 200 or something, if you are young, you get to 250. That's 25% more. You should feel extremely happy about that increase, and then get it into a longer period of time, and then push it to 280. And if you start at 280, try to get through the sound barrier of 300, and then make yourself a new barrier. And if you count 10 wrong, it doesn't really matter if you get from 200 to 240. Still 20% instead of 25 is good enough.
Yeah. And then I would also recommend like you find someone else to do this with, even if it's just on Zoom, because I personally am a very competitive person. And if I've got someone else who's doing the same thing as me, I want to make sure I'm doing it better than them. So that could be also a good way to motivate yourself to do this even better. So
yeah, that's absolutely true. So in Singapore Sports School, we had 2 ways of doing that. So either lefty and righty, they do it side by side. So to see this one is currently faster, I have to speed up.
Right.
Or we would pair up the 2 fastest ones and let them face each other, so that they see, oh, this one is faster, I can push a little bit more. So we did exactly what you suggest. create some sort of rivalry relationship with somebody, and some venture point where like, okay, he's currently faster, I gotta do faster, and it also helps later to take a look at are my numbers are in the right ballpark, because you will see, okay, Sharks, he's doing 1 more per second, so he's going to end up 60 more in a minute.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. Do you have anything else to say on this subject or about the drill?
No, I mean, have fun with it. Don't take it super serious. Just enjoy the drill. Push a little bit your maximum speed, little by little. Don't go crazy and injure yourself. Just do it responsibly and have some fun with it. And try to get a little bit fast over this period of time. That if you go back in the fencing gym, that you can surprise a few people how fast you can run away, or how fast you can catch them.
Yeah.
Or in the ideal case, both.
Perfect. Ralf, thank you so much.
No problem. My pleasure. Anytime.